How to teach our children to solve their conflict independently without us being a referee all the time, separating them, stopping laundry, stopping cooking, and just running like chicken with no head. How to teach our children to solve their conflict independently and peacefully, without the fights, without the hitting, without the throwing, without the biting. That's going to be the topic of this week's podcast episode in the Parenting with Understanding podcast. If you want to raise siblings who get along, who share nicely, who are able to solve their conflicts peacefully without needing you all the time, but it is a struggle. On this podcast episode, I'm going to show you the steps to teach children the skills they need to solve their conflicts peacefully. You are going to learn what these skills are. There are three levels. You are going to learn how to teach these skills. I'm sorry for the, I was clearing my throat. And then once you are done with this podcast episode, you will have everything in your toolbox to raise children who can get along, even when they don't agree. Who can get along even when they don't agree. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Parenting with Understanding podcast. My name is Marcela Collier. I am your host, and I am the founder of HIC Parenting Education Agency. My mission with my team of coaches is to help parents break free from angry reactivity, bring peace to their parenting, and raise their children with peace and accountability. And part of it is equipping our children to solve their conflict peacefully. And that's going to be the topic of this week's podcast episode. But before we go there, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while now and you found it informational, if you found it insightful, if you found it inspirational, I encourage you to share it with one friend. Could you please share it with one friend? And number two, leave a positive review. Open the description, leave us your review. Let us know how this podcast has helped you raise your children with a lot more peace and feel calmer in your parenting. Hopefully, a 5-star review so we can get to more parents. Okay, so let's talk about what are the skills that we need to teach our children so they learn to solve their conflict independently and peacefully. So these are emotional intelligence skills. What is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability of understanding feelings and communicating feelings and needs peacefully. Why is this so important when it comes to helping our children get along? Because that's why they don't get along. They don't understand what they're feeling. They don't know how to communicate what they're feeling. So therefore, they do it through chaos. They do it through tantrums. They do it through hating one another. They do it through pushing each other. They do it through bothering the baby. So once they learn these skills, they are a lot more likely to solve their conflict peacefully because they will learn to communicate what they feel without those big behaviors. So, in emotional intelligence skills have three layer skills, like three tiers, three three levels or three tiers of these skills. And then we teach our children from tier 1 to tier 3 with the understanding that our children still have immature brains. They are not able to fully respond back to us with 100% emotional intelligence, even if we teach them, because they're not there developmentally. They're not there developmentally. So, what do we do in this case? What do we do in this case? In this case, we teach them emotional intelligence skills to solve for the future and to help them solve their right now conflict with our help. So, in the future, maybe in a few months, in a few years, if they're very small, they can do it themselves. I have almost 9-year-old twins, and let me tell you, it's a lot easier now because I've been sewing for so many years. Now I'm able to see them solving their conflict peacefully a lot of the times. Granted, one of them is autistic with higher needs, and there are times that I still need to intervene, and there are times that they cannot solve their conflict without hitting one another. But that's not the norm. The norm is that if I hear siblings squabbles, I don't panic because I know that they have the skills. And that's my hope to you once you are done learning on this podcast episode how to develop these skills. So let's talk about the three-tier skills, the three-tier emotional intelligence skills to help our children. Okay, level one. Level one is teaching our children to understand themselves. What does that mean? Right now, I am connecting my phone, but maybe I'll do it a little bit later. But basically, understanding themselves is knowing what they're feeling, knowing how to communicate what they're feeling peacefully. Let me give you a scenario. Let's just say one of your children is playing with Legos and the other one is coming towards this child playing Legos, and they take that child takes one Lego. And then an emotional intelligent child who understands their feelings, they might say, Santiago, I don't like when you take my toys. I am playing with my toys right now. Your turn is going to be later. That's a child with emotional intelligence skills level 1. They are able to understand what they need and their feelings and communicate it peacefully. That's level 1. There is a level 2 tier. Level 2 tier is that they don't only understand themselves, but they can understand their their siblings' needs and feelings. So how would a tier 2 emotional intelligent child may sound like? Santiago, I understand that you want to play with those Legos. Right now, it is my turn, and I'm not done with my turn. So maybe you can have your turn when I'm done. That's level 2. Let's talk about level 3. Level 3 emotional intelligence. So, an emotional intelligent child who's level 3 emotional intelligent, they don't only communicate their needs and feelings peacefully, they don't only understand the other person's needs and feelings, but they are able to find common ground. And this is a very high emotional intelligence skill that many adults don't have. So, how would this sound? Let's just say a tier 3 or a level 3 emotional intelligent child. They may say something like this: Santiago, I understand that you want to play too. And I want to play too. So I have an idea. What about if you take the red pile of Legos and I play with the brown and the green pile? What do you think about that? Do you have any other idea? So tier 3 is not just I see me, I see you, but I find common ground. Now, my question to you is, does this sound unrealistic? Yes, it is unrealistic because even adults struggle with tier 1 sometimes. many with tier 2, and most adults struggle with tier 3. So much that nations go to war because they are not able to find common ground. So, what is the thing here? Is the thing to expect our children, if we teach them level 1, 2, 3 emotional intelligence, for them to give it to us? No. The intention is to teach it to them so they can know the skill and give us glimpses of each one of these three levels in their childhood. That's what I see with my twins. Sometimes they're able to access emotional intelligence, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they can access level 1, sometimes not. Sometimes I see level 3 and I'm like amazing, but then 10 minutes later they're fighting again. That's the realistic expectation when it comes to kids. Now, what's the difference between a child who's being trained in emotional intelligence and a child who's not when they grow up? Let me give you an example. So I was watching Mr. Beast, and then he had this contest of, it was like with 1,000 people, and he divided all these people in groups of three. Each group of three went to a Leo cubicle, so they were not able to have contact with other groups. And then Mr. Beast gave each group a problem to solve, like a problems to solve. They basically needed to come up with one person that they needed to eliminate from the game, from the entire game. So that was the problem to solve. We need to come up with a way to find the way to know who's the one in this group of three that is going to leave. So in that interaction, in that game, I saw who was emotional intelligent, and they were adults, who was emotional intelligent and who was not. So the groups who had emotional intelligent people, they were able to communicate peacefully. They were able to communicate their concerns. They were able to communicate their feelings. They were able to propose a solution, and then they made up their mind and they came up with the solution. The other two groups, one group, like one kind of group, they didn't have emotional intelligence skills, and then they enter into fights. They started fighting with one another because they were not able to see each other's feelings and needs, just their own feelings and needs, their own feelings. So level 1, like the first type of group, they have all three layers or skills of emotional intelligence. The second one, they only had one level, which is understanding your own needs. So they were fighting because they were not understanding the other one's needs and feelings. And what happened to this kind of group? They made very poor decisions and they ended up hurting the team. And then the least emotional intelligent groups, they had zero skills to understand themselves, to understand the other, and they just didn't even make a decision. They didn't make a decision. So because they didn't make a decision, when the timer went off, all three of that group were eliminated. So, do you see how important it is? It is not just for the now fights. It is not just so you have a moment of peace and being able to finish dinner. Is to set up your children for future success when they are out in the world and they need to solve their conflicts. That's the importance of developing emotional intelligence skills, level 1, 2, and 3, in our kids, so they can solve their conflict peacefully in a way that benefits them. So that's level 1, 2, and 3. How to develop these skills? You're like, Marcel, okay, those are great, but how do I do that? Number one, it is important that you have those skills because you are your children's biggest role model. And if they see you understanding your feelings, communicating your feelings peacefully, seeing other people's side, finding common ground, if they see all three tier of emotional intelligence skills in you, they're more likely to follow you. It's like children don't do as we say, they do as we do. But if they see that sometimes you're warm, connected, you're able to communicate peacefully, and half of the times you're reactive, you're shut down, you you doubt yourself, you're not assertive, you're you're speaking from fear and anxiety, you're yelling, then that's what they're going to follow. If you're like Marcela, I try so hard, but when I'm exhausted, when it's bedtime, I start pretty good in the morning, but by 4 p.m. it's hard. And I always end up showing up what I don't want my children to model, to repeat back to me. I want to tell you that you are a good parent. And there is a way to get out of this. There is a four-step roadmap to break free from this pendulum pattern, this inconsistent pattern of showing up and not showing up, being warm and not being warm, uh, uh, being emotional intelligent and not being emotional intelligent. And this four-step roadmap is going to show you how to break free from that toxic pattern, bring peace to their parenting, and start raising your children with a lot more safety from feeling secure as a parent. This four-step roadmap is in my free class that you can take right now. You can find it on hicparenting.com. If you are watching the podcast episode from YouTube, I'm going to leave a card up here, or it's in the description below the YouTube video. If you are just listening to the Parenting with Understanding podcast, you can open the description and the link is in the description so you can start making changes and being the role model that your children need to grow up as emotional, intelligent people. So let's keep moving forward. Let's keep moving forward. How to teach these skills? So, number one, you are modeling it. Number two, you are talking about their feelings all the time, not just in the trigger moment, not just when you want them to solve their conflict, but all the time. So you create an environment of emotional intelligence. So your children correlate talking about feelings not just with bad moments, but with all moments. So if you're feeding the baby and then your child comes in and then he tries to bother the baby, you may translate to them, hey, the baby's feeding. Do you like to be bothered when you're feeding? When you're not when you're feeding, when you're eating? No. The baby's eating right now and you know he's fussing. That means that he doesn't like that. He might be feeling a little uncomfortable. So you are translating the baby's feelings. You are translating the happy feelings. Oh, you're singing to the baby. You look at what he's doing. He's moving his arms up and down and he's smiling. That means that he feels connected to you. He likes it. He likes when you sing to him. How are you feeling? Do you feel good? Do you feel connected? Translate feelings. Ask a lot of questions, especially after those hard moments. How did you feel when you saw Santi grabbing your Legos? How do you think Santi felt when you pushed him down? What can you do differently? How can we solve this differently next time? That's teaching level one, level two, level three emotional intelligence skills. Model wording. And I think this is my favorite ever emotional intelligence tools that I use with my twins. That's for sure. I use it all the time, all day since they were little toddlers. So, how do you model wording? In the interaction, you act as if you are one of them or as if you are both of them. Miguel, I don't like when you take my toys. You say it. You say it. Santi, can you say that, please? Say it. Miguel, I don't like when you take my toys. And then Miguel, Santi, I want to play with you, and you've been playing with that toy for too long. I want my turn now. Say it to Santi. You model the interaction that you want them to have in the moment and encourage them to repeat it. If they are regulated enough, they might be able to repeat it back. If not, if they're too dysregulated and upset, they might not. But it's there in their brain, it's there inside their brain. And you will be surprised. You will be surprised because I lived it. You may think like, oh, this is not working, but it is working because 20 minutes later, you see them using the skills that you thought were not working right now. Children won't use the skills many times when you want them to use the skills, but when they feel like using the skills. Model wording. What about if there is a conflict of needs? Let's just say that it's your child's birthday and then the other one feels left out. He wants to play with the toys too, and then he goes and tries to reach out for one of the presents. How do you solve that conflict of needs? Because one has the need to feel included, to to explore the new toys, and the other one has the need of protecting his property and being the first one to open his new toys. Both of their needs are valid. So, my rule of thumb is there a pre established rule about this? If there is, then I state the rule. Hey, Santi, remember a rule? In our house, we ask for permission before we use somebody else's thing. These are Miguel's presents. You need to ask him for permission first. So if there is a pre-established rule, it is an easy go. But what about if there is not a pre-established rule? This is a beautiful opportunity of co-creating a rule with your children. It could be a rule for that moment only, or it could be a rule that could be set for even future times. I see that you want to explore the toys and you feel a little left out. You want toys too, right? I understand. And it's Miguel's toys. And he gets to decide. So how can we solve this? And invite them to co-create a rule. Maybe the rule is that Santi's allowed to play with Miguel's toys after Miguel opens the presents or after Miguel plays with his toys. So if there is a rule, state the rule. If there is not a rule, co-create the rule with your kids. That's tapping into teaching them tier 3 or level 3 emotional intelligence skills to solve their conflict peacefully. So that's how you equip your children with the skills to solve their conflict peacefully without needing you all the time. They will be able to access their skills sometimes, and sometimes they will need you because they're little kids. But you're not going to feel like you are running around all day separating them and being the referee, the judge. I don't feel that anymore. It used to be like that when they were two because they were new to the skill development, but not anymore. Many times I'm here in the office and I hear conflict at the other side of the room, and I don't go because I know they got it. And most of the time they got it. There are some times that it escalates and I have to intervene because again, they're kids. But imagine that's you, that you don't have to stop your life all day to separate your kids. It could happen once you teach them emotional intelligence skills to solve their conflict peacefully. If this podcast episode gave you information, gave you insight, gave you golden nuggets, golden gold, golden gold. That's redundant. Would you share it with a parent friend? Share it with your spouse, share it with your sister, share it with your mom and say, hey, I think that's what we need. So our children play peacefully. So they learn to for us to not be the referee anymore. Share it with a parent friend who has more than one. They will thank you for it. And I want to tell you that it only takes understanding of yourself and of your children's needs to transform your parenting. That's Parenting with Understanding. I'll see you in our next episode.